Shalom. First, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakha Double honors to the apostles, bishops, and elders of Great Millstone, from whom I learned this truth. And shalom to the 144,000 elect. I am Mayakala. And I'm not really sure what I'm going to call this, but I wanted to bring this out just to give further example or more exposing on how Esau is a liar. Esau is the so-called white man. It's just, I have a video that gives a little bit more or gives further evidence and exposes this man to be a liar, because that is what he is. And it just provides a little bit more information and shows how he's been really using the same playbook over and over to perpetrate his lies, but it's just that doesn't work at this point in time anymore, because, well, it's a different time and his time is just about up, so he's being exposed. So I do have a video that I want to play, and then I'll have a couple verses that I want to bring out. And Salakia, because the video that I'm going to show is a clip, and it's probably a good 15 minutes, but I need to be able to show the 15 minutes in order for you to get the full understanding of what I wanted to show and what I wanted to convey and bring across. And this is from the news, the news show Redacted. It is not a mainstream news show, but it gives a little bit more information, and it goes a little bit more in depth because of it being a private news channel or internet news. And it's not mainstream news, because mainstream news, as we know over the years, has really followed the script and really has just been reading what's been put in front of them. And they've also been partners to perpetrate the lie that Esau wants to bring and give to us as what we call, and present to us what they call news, giving us their version or their side of the story that they want us to see, what they want us to see, and keeping us in the dark of what the actual truth is. But I won't make this long, and like I said, Salakia for showing so much of this, but I need to show at least a good 15 minutes of it, for you can get an understanding of the story and what's being said here. And this is going to be a little bit going to expose some information on Charlie Kirk and his unaliving, and it's going to shed some light on really what's really taking place here. So I'm going to go ahead and start this. And Salaki, I'm showing it from another device, so bear with me.
Here on the show, and we're not ashamed of that. I think that the CIA and the three-letter agency connections to the Charlie Kirk assassination are growing too obvious to ignore at this point. Use Tyler Robinson as a patsy, use a convenient trans cover story, admit that you have overwhelming digital data that you present during a court hearing yesterday, so much so that you'll need a delay because there's just so much information. 5 days is not enough with all of the digital information that we have on Tyler Robinson. Too much. The CIA, of course, is really good at planting digital evidence, as we know, allowing cameras in the courtroom, by the way, to help sell your story. Former CIA agents, CIA whistleblowers, all admitting that this has all the hallmarks of a CIA or intel operation. Just yesterday on our show, former CIA agent Larry Johnson said the very same thing.
I never discount the power of my old organization to be involved with a lot of nefarious activity.
But as many of you know, UVU has deep ties to the CIA. Here's a brief overview by Pia Varma. Watch.
Okay, so here's what's interesting. Utah State University, where Robinson studied briefly, has stronger than average CIA and Israel ties, driven by its Center for Anticipatory Intelligence, the CAI, the nation's first such program offering unique undergraduate and graduate credentials, led by ex-CIA analyst Jeannie Johnson and co-founded by former CIA Assistant Director Matt Barrett, making it a rare intelligence hub outside D.C. elites like Georgetown. Robinson attended USU for one semester in 2021 as a pre-engineering major before dropping out. USU also secures over $2.4 million in U.S.-Israel research grants. My next questions would be, did Robinson know anyone at CAI? Did he take any classes with any professors? Why did he drop out? And who organized the Turning Point USA event?
Yeah, USU, not UVU. Pretty important distinction, but nonetheless. Interestingly, Husselbich found that UVU CIA spy school profiles were erased after the assassination. Rusty Needs, a former CIA officer, professor of Utah Valley's University Center for National Security Studies, had his profile just totally disappeared. And among others, we now know that right after the assassination, the school suddenly removed six more professors since Charlie Kirk's assassination, all with ties to the intelligence and security apparatus, especially at the school. John Cullen also has a lot of interesting questions about the spy drones, the spy planes over Charlie Kirk's assassination. We have military spy planes launching drones over the place at Charlie Kirk's killing. Plane arrives 3 hours early, drops to 200, slows to a minimum speed. Multiple drones, and why were these spy planes flying overhead at the time? Joining us now is Colonel Roxanne Watkins, a retired U.S. Air Force officer who spent 30 years in military service, including time at U.S. Central Command and the Pentagon. She brings firsthand insight into the intelligence operations and how nefarious they are. Colonel, great to see you here. Sorry for the little technical hiccup at the beginning of the show. Thanks.
The digital dollar is coming, and it could change how your savings are controlled. Learn the tax-free, penalty-free way to diversify your
patience.
Thanks for having me.
So I think it's important, obviously, to look at some of the smaller details, the nuances that we've been looking at over the past few weeks. But I think one of your specialties is that 30,000-foot level and connecting the patterns here. Everyone's been in the weeds, the trans story, Israel story, Mossad story, all these little pieces. But can you take the 30,000-foot level approach here and why this has all the hallmarks of an intel job?
So originally, when you and I started communicating this morning, and you were like, why? And that's the question that a lot of people need to have answered. And through the research that I've been doing, one of the fundamental principles is a thing called strategy of tension. And it is to keep populations divided, keep them in silos, and to keep them from talking to each other. Because what happens is when people talk to each other, they oftentimes find that they have a lot of commonalities and develop like an esprit de corps among them. And you cannot control people if they have commonalities. And so dividing them up into all of these different entities, whether it's trans versus non-trans or black versus white, the CIA has had a pattern, a history of sending what we would refer to as advon teams into countries that they want to destabilize and overthrow, and finding out what their Achilles heel is. Where's the dividing lines in that country, whether it's in Africa and it has to do with tribal history, whatever it is, because they're going to use that in order to divide the population. And if you go back in history to the...
So that's one of the reasons why they wanted to stress every time these shells were found, that they wanted to stress what messages were written on these shells, and keeping an effort to make sure that they divide the people, that they keep that friction going. Salaki.
The 1960s and all of the turmoil that was going on there, you find lots of commonalities. You had people like Fred Hampton, where if you just do a cursory look at him, everybody called him a Marxist and said, he was really a bad guy. But what he had started doing that made him a threat was he built a thing called the Rainbow Coalition, and it had the lower class people, regardless of what their ethnic background was, talking to each other. And he took poor whites, poor blacks, and Hispanics and was building coalitions all over the country. Well, one day he gets drugged and his house is stormed by the FBI and they assassinate everybody in the house. And you look at RFK and his campaign in 1968, the same thing. He was building bridges to communities that was going to coalesce around his message. He just had won the last primary that basically guaranteed him the Democrat nomination in the 1968 election, and he gets assassinated. We can look at JFK, same thing. He's reaching out. While RFK concentrated more internally to the United States, JFK built coalitions around the world. He had reached out to Indonesia. He had reached out to France in their battle with keeping Algeria as a...
Yeah, this is fair use. Fair use. This is just for edification purposes.
Colony. And Charles de Gaulle, the prime minister, president of France, was very much in favor of giving Algeria their freedom. And JFK was very instrumental in supporting that initiative. And the people that are controlling all of this, I refer to them as the international syndicate. They're the ones that direct the intelligence agencies. A lot of people think that the intelligence agencies work for their government. It is my proposition that they have never worked for their government. They work for this oligarch, and they take instructions from them. And that's why, to your point that you just made, people look because they think the intelligence agencies support the government, that they're somehow different and controlled by their government. There's actually been multiple occasions where the CIA, despite anything that was told to them to do by the president, has went out on their own and did whatever they wanted to do. And they work across intelligence agencies with MI6 kind of sitting at the head of it. And what I have come to believe, just based on the research.
Now, people believe that because we always see our presidents appointing leaders to these alphabet agencies. So instead of really going in depth and exposing the fact that these agencies are not governed by your government, they're governed by elites. They have their own bosses. They don't listen to the presidents. They don't listen to the people who appoint them to these positions. And just like these presidents are elected, these elections are false also. These elections, these people, these presidents are selected before you even vote. But I'm going to let this continue. Salakia.
Is in using the strategy of tension as kind of that umbrella. The placement of Israel in Israel, if you go back to the founding of Israel, there were multiple sites that were considered for where that was going to be set up. A homeland for the Jewish people. They picked specifically Israel because it allowed them to implement a strategy of tension and control the Middle East. And of course, this is, around the time where they've discovered large oil deposits all over that area. And by having Israel located where it is today, it was very advantageous to this group of international syndicate people to implement control. And so if you carry that forward and you look at what happens in the United States, every time something seems to be going very well, you have this explosion of something. For example, in the 1990s, you had Ruby Ridge, you had Waco, you had Timothy McVeigh at Oklahoma, and that started the mantra of white nationalist Christians and how they were tied to domestic terrorism. There was a restrictive law that was passed immediately after 1995 in Oklahoma. And then you move forward to 9/11 and you get more and more regulations and laws passed that keeps constricting our freedoms. And to your point that you made earlier when we were talking, that's the push towards one world government is you have to.
Right. So the digital ID, the sort of Palantir wetting its lips. We over the past week or 2 weeks, there's been an explosion of digital ID tracking related stories. Vietnam just seized 86 million bank accounts to move them to biometric scanning. It's for our safety, Colonel, right? We need to be tracked and monitored. And what better way to do it than have us all worried about the next assassination, fomenting this dissent?
And see, that's what the mainstream news will push. That's what the mainstream news will tell you, that this is all for your safety. It's all for your good. Your government is looking out for you. So putting these safeguards in place. But with the advent of this internet, you have other reporters and other news that's available to you that can give you a different point of view. I want to stop and read. I want to stop and read one verse here. This is Ephesians. I want to go to Ephesians. And chapter 5. And the reason I want to bring this verse out is because you can't just take what this mainstream news, even the news that we find on the internet, other sources of news. You can't just take for granted what they're giving you, what they're feeding you. You have to be able to go in and do the research for yourself to find out that there's more to these stories that they present to you, because the visions that they give you, the imagery that they portray, your eyes can lie to you. Just like we saw that bullet hit Charlie Kirk. In all actuality, it didn't hit from the direction that they told you that it hit from. What you saw was an exit wound, where all it spurted out from his neck. You saw an exit wound. You didn't see a entrance wound. So even though it appeared as though it came from the front, it actually came from the back. But the media will show you something and tell you what it is and tell you what they want you to see. And because they've been getting away with it for years, you take for face value what exactly is being said to you. Not only that, they did more investigation, and you could actually see there was an explosion that took place. And it kind of puts you in the mind of what happened and what took place with all those pagers that the Israelis used when they began their initial threat with their war effort. They used pagers, exploding pagers. Well, this man Charlie Kirk was wearing a mic on his collar, and it's funny that he had a mic on his collar and a microphone in his hand. Why did he need two microphones? But I want to go and read Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 10. And like I said, I'm bringing this out because you have to go deeper than what's being shown to you. You have to prove these stories, because this man Esau is a liar. And he's been getting away with this same playbook for a long time. It happened in the 60s, happened even before film was even available to us. They've been doing these things, doing the same thing over and over again, and been getting away with it because your eyes lie to you, and you have a tendency to believe the first story that's being presented to you because it's coming across the airways, it's coming across your official news source. All right? It says, this is Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 10. It says, proving what is acceptable unto the Lord, and have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them. And I want to read to verse 11 in the NLT. It says, take no part in the worthless deeds of evil and darkness. Instead, expose them. So that's the reason why I wanted to even bring this story out. Not that I care about Charlie Kirk, but I care about what's being presented to us, how Esau is just so used to being to bring his news, put it in front of your face, and even though you can plainly see it doesn't line up, there's something wrong, they still have a way of just bringing out their news story, presenting it to you, and telling you that's what happened, even though it doesn't line up, and even though there's some inconsistencies, they expect you to believe what they tell you. And like I said in the past, you had no other source of news that was able to go more in depth and even expose the fact that there's some inconsistencies. They've been able to get away with it in the past. But now with the invention of this internet, you have some people who are willing to go a little bit deeper. And in the past, you did have people who are willing to go a little bit deeper, but because, like I said, there was no way of getting that news story out. They could either unalive those people who went too deep, or they could pay them off and just shut them up. Or they could simply just seal files for decades upon decades until everybody that was involved in the story passed on, and then you have no information, just like we still have today. There's still nothing concrete about, as they mentioned earlier, the JFK assassination. And that happened in the 60s, and still they're lying, lying about what happened. Even though it's really been discovered and it's been exposed that this man is a liar. You have to reprove him. You have to go back and look and research, because you can't believe what this man says. He's a proven liar. Now, I just got just a few more minutes of this video that I wanted to bring out.
Having truck bombs going off inside of churches. We need to be tracked. We need it for our safety. We need this digital strategy.
But I mean, what you're implying, and I'm not refuting this, but it's terrifying to think about, that there are powerful people operating separate of our electorate who said, that guy, Charlie Kirk, he's got to go because it would be infinitely useful to us. And somebody marked him, and he trusted the U.S. government. And so that I find... not that it's not hard, it's easy to digest, but terrifying to actually understand. Do you know what I mean?
So again, it's not the U.S. government per se.
Right.
There are elements embedded in the U.S. government that are orchestrating all of this, obviously, but it's not the collective U.S. government. Because again, I was part of it. I was never part of this. But
sure.
And that's the part I think most people struggle with, is they want to collectively say it's the entire government, when my observations is that the CIA has never taken directions from the U.S. government. Have we had compliant presidents that kind of basically gave them full reign? Yes. I talk about those people as being the selected people, but occasionally you had, like JFK, people that went against their direction, their agenda. And bad things happen to those people. I think Trump is an example of that during his first term. He would not have been under constant attack for 4 years with coup after coup after coup had he been doing their bidding. They let people who do their bidding sit in that seat unopposed. And you have only to look at Biden and George Bush Sr. and blah, blah, blah. So
she's telling you right there that these presidents are just puppets. These alphabet agencies are ruled by the elites. They're told what to do, as well as your presidents. These presidents are told what to do. And either they go along with the agenda or they get unalived.
I do think that it is terrifying.
This is how to get rid of stuck mucus fast. You can't get the mucus to...
once that realization kind of sinks in. But let me speak just for a minute about the Charlie Kirk specifically. So one of the, and this has been true for 80 years, one of the main thrust that the CIA has focused on is our university system. There has been university after university, Harvard, Yale, Columbia, that have had institutions set up. And you just mentioned the CAI, which I think is hilarious since it's kind of the CIA disguised, that are literally funded through covert means by the CIA. They function. Henry Kissinger had one set up at Harvard. And years later, it was outed as actually being a CIA front. And all they did once it got exposed as a CIA front was took his deputy, created another institution on Harvard, and put her over there in charge and just removed Henry Kissinger's name. So these things have existed for a very, very long time. And the CIA recruits at any university, and Utah is a great recruiting ground. You can go through article after article of CIA presence on primarily Mormon campuses, and that's not a slight against the religion, but because Mormons are required to learn multiple languages and go to other countries.
You just had
and so by the time you get into college, you have all of this basket of skill sets that the CIA literally drools over. And so they are a target. And that kind of plays into that. But I don't want anybody to think that the few examples that the one video woman was addressing is a unique thing. It is not. The CIA, and let me just give you an example. In Vietnam, the Office of Public Safety under USAID set up a program at Michigan State University and also a satellite at Indiana University, which disturbed me deeply because that's my alma mater. And the CIA, the staff was 100% CIA agents, and they picked that staff up from Michigan State University and deployed it under the guise of a program from that university and plopped it down into Vietnam, which blossomed into the Phoenix program. So if you were to go back and look at normal history, you'd go, oh, that was just a bunch of professors over there trying to teach the cops how to be cops. It was not. And if you do any research into the Office of Public Safety, you find out that they recruited police chiefs from across and senior police officers, which then goes to the corruption of police entities in the United States, which you have to know exist. Because again, I'll skip over to Los Angeles. Just do a research or a search on the internet, not on Google, of Los Angeles Police Department and CIA. You're going to get a ton of articles written about the fact that the CIA had infiltrated the Los Angeles Police Department in a particular intelligence unit there during the 1980s, late 70s and 80s, when the crack cocaine explosion happened in Los Angeles. They knowingly targeted Black neighborhoods with tons and tons of cocaine. And again, that information is all out there. So
Not
you
just
have
Los
corruption at the
Angeles.
local level. The Office of Public Safety under USAID, which was a CIA front, hired police chiefs and senior police officials to deploy all over the world and set up national police forces. And the national police forces were known for torture, assassination, and all kinds of atrocities.
Unbelievable. You're blowing my mind. I knew about the crack piece of this. I didn't know that deep level connection there. And I didn't know the university connection at this level. I'm just going through the research now. It's unbelievable to me how just widespread this is. It's not just, as you pointed out, just dedicated to those few profiles that she was highlighting in that video. As it relates to other patterns within the CIA and why this was an intel hit, what connections do you see to similar hits that have been carried out before? The use of a patsy, the digital dumping of information. Yesterday at the hearing, so we have so much digital information on him.
Yeah, it feels like purposeful chaos.
Yeah, that we have to delay the hearing because we just got so much digital stuff that we found.
So you go back to the JFK assassination, and that's what it was all about. Let's focus on all of the details. Now, obviously, we didn't have social media, which kind of adds to a layer of confusion for their side. But the focus on every little detail that came out, the gun, the bullets, the limousine. So they're going to leave all of these pieces out there for people to fixate on. And of course, the media runs cover for all of it, basically saying that oh, that's a conspiracy. That's a conspiracy. If anybody tries to zoom out and tries to articulate, there's some common denominators here. What I found most interesting when I was doing the research into the assassination of Martin Luther King is I was unaware that like 2.5 decades later, there was a civil suit which the family won that basically said it was a conspiracy, that it was not a lone gunman. And again, during that assassination, everybody was fixated on all of the little details, because what they will do is they put out enough details for people to start arguing about. And the arguing of, well, this bullet went this way or that way allows people airtime, and then you get tired of it after you've heard all of the opposing points, where again...
So they sidetrack you. They get you distracted, and you don't even pay attention to the obvious things, and if you forget that this thing doesn't even make sense in the first place. All right? There's too many inconsistencies here. Another verse I wanted to bring out, and like I said, there's only a few more minutes of this that I wanted to show, and then I'll go ahead and wrap this up. But I wanted to go to 1 Thessalonians in chapter 5 and 21. And I'm sure I brought this out before, but I wanted to bring this out again because you have to. This is verse 21. It says, prove all things and hold fast that which is good. All right. And even though Salakia for this being mid-sentence, it says in the NLT, says, but test everything that is said and hold on to what is good. So you have to, when Esau is presenting one of these news stories to you, you have to analyze it on yourself, because he's going to bring it out to you just the way the elites tell him to bring it out to you. And whether it makes sense to you or not, he's going to tell you this is what happened, this is what their investigation found, and this is the conclusion. And I just wanted to look at this word prove. And it is G1381. I'll give you a pronunciation of it.
Strong's G 1381. Dakimadzo.
And it says to test and examine, prove, and to scrutinize whether a thing is genuine or not. All right. So you have to take it. You have to, when Esau presents a story to you, and and it doesn't line up, it doesn't, the facts don't line up, you have to scrutinize it. You have to go deeper, because this man has a history of lying. And that's what he likes to do to history. He likes to wait until time passes so that he can slowly change up the story, so he can slowly make himself appear to be innocent. Just like he wants to go and erase history right now. He wants to erase and take the teaching of slavery out of schools. He wants to go to the Smithsonian and remove certain items out of the Smithsonian because he wants to make himself blameless. He wants to just erase history as things never happened, so he can make himself be blameless. All right. And like I said, I just got a few more minutes in this that I want to finish bringing out, and then that'll be it. It's lucky, but I needed to listen to all of this so that it makes sense.
Nobody zooms out and goes, "Hey, guys, this looks exactly like this one over here."
Great point. Yeah, everyone's fixated on the bullets. Oh, there was trans writings on the bullets.
Yeah.
You know, the Discord chat, the gun found in the woods. You know, he's a Dairy Queen. Like all these like little nuggets spaced out, and then don't ask any questions. So how do we filter
all of that? Because so much of it sounds too stupid. Like, how do we filter this information?
See, and it's interesting that she's asking, how do we filter this stuff? See, and I'm going to bring a verse out, Jeremiah chapter 6. See, the men of the Lord know that Satan has certain things that he does, and we know Satan's ways. We know his subtlety. We know how this man is a liar. So we know that this man is not going to be truthful. All right. He's brought into this world estranged from the womb, telling lies. And this is Jeremiah 6, verse 20. Let's see. All right, and I'm going to bring this out not only is Esau, we know the ways of Esau, but we also know the ways of some of these Israelites, some of these 2/3 Israelites who are just walking in wickedness and do wicked things. And you have to be able to test them and be able to understand what you're dealing with when you're dealing with these people. And that's why I said the men of the Lord understand how to test these people, and how to try them, and how to be sure of what you're dealing with and who you're talking to and who you're getting information from. It says, Jeremiah chapter 6 and verse 27 says, I have set thee for a tower and a fortress among my people, that thou mayest know and try their way. And I want to read that in the NLT. It says, Jeremiah, I have made you a tester of metals, that you may determine the quality of my people. So when you understand the type of people that you're dealing with, and when you're dealing with the 2/3 and even with these other nations, you have to understand that they're walking in wickedness. They're walking counter to the Lord. They're walking counter to the ways of the laws that the men of the Lord have been taught and the men of the Lord understand. All right. And I just want to finish up just a few more minutes on this, and then I'll have maybe one more verse I want to bring out, and that'll be the end. So Salakia for this being so long.
How do you do it?
I do not tend to spend very much time. The inconsistencies was all I needed to hear, because of the greater umbrella of strategy of tension. So if you have a very effective communicator that is pulling people together, and he can articulately refute the divisions that, in my opinion, are not there. They're artificial. And he was an excellent person at doing that. He was very effective at refuting the CIA propaganda media piece. You got to go. And that's the piece they don't want you to see. And again, you look back through history and you find out that all of the coalition builders had the same fate.
Someone in our chat room said, well, first of all, they think you're fantastic and pay attention to what you're saying. But somebody else is saying the CIA is self-funded, so they can operate really at will outside of, as you pointed out, the U.S. federal government. So when we say the government killed him, not really. Sort of extracurricular government killed him, right?
So when the CIA was created, in the immediate aftermath of that, and I've done a lot of research on this, the Stay Behind network, which was going to be a network in Europe and in the United States that was going to be able to be these chaos creators, was fielded using Rockefeller and the Marshall Plan money. And that was their initial seed money to get this organization set up to be used by the...
My preferred method is the bait shark right here. What's up, guys? My name is Adam from the Darren Fishing YouTube channel.
Intelligence agencies all through NATO. But because they didn't have a long-term sustainment funding mechanism for the covert operations, they sponsored, for lack of a better word, a guy over in China by the name of Chiang Kai-shek. And he was the leading warlord opium pusher in China that was taking the Indian opium brought over from the UK, was kind of the push behind it, into China. And that was the whole, one of the large segments of the Chinese Revolution, with, in addition to communism. Mao didn't want any opium there. So he eventually obviously won the Civil War, pushed Chiang Kai-shek out, and the CIA eventually, through a couple of other countries, set Chiang Kai-shek up in China, or in Taiwan. And Taiwan had formerly been referred to as Formosa. And so one day they just changed the sign and say, we're going to call you Taiwan. This is your new president. And he immediately implemented martial law. And again, I had no idea. I didn't learn this in any of the degrees that I've gotten, all of which required history, that Chiang Kai-shek immediately implemented martial law, and they lived under martial law for the next 40 years. And that's because he was basically the opium king. At one point, he supplied the world 80% of the world's opium from all over Asia, channeling it to Europe and the United States and other places. And so that funding stream of the drug operations is what seeded the covert funding. It was initially laundered primarily only through the Vatican Bank, but then they set up fake banks like BCCI and Nugent Hand and several other banks. And so they have a completely different stream of money that is completely unaccounted for.
Gosh.
I mean, the seed money for the CIA funneled through the Vatican Bank from Chiang Kai-shek, Chinese nationalist leader, pushed out by Mao. It's unbelievable, but not shocking at
And
all.
in fact, some of that is in the information about
I'm going to stop this here, because I think you get the gist of what I'm trying to bring out to you, is that this man Esau is a liar. He's been using the same playbook over and over, but now he's been exposed. He's been exposed, all right, because we have something that we didn't have in past years, where he was able to control the media, control the information, and create a narrative and bring it to you, present it to you, and whether it made sense to you or not, he told you this is what it is. This is how the story goes, all right? I just got a couple more verses that I wanted to bring out, and I wanted to go back to mention again that how your eyes lie to you every day. But you can't just go on face value. You can't go on just what you see. You have to try the spirit, because you can have a person who appears to be Esau who may indeed be an Israelite, and vice versa. Someone who appears to be an Israelite and may indeed have the spirit of Esau on him and be wicked as all get out. So I just wanted to bring out this 1 John chapter 4 and verse 1. It says, "Beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits whether they are of the Most High, because many false prophets are gone out into the world." So not only is this false prophets that's going out into the world, you got wickedness that's going out into the world. And your eye, like I say, your eyes can lie to you, but you have to try the spirit. You have to try the spirit to understand what it is that you're dealing with. To understand, is this a valid story that you're being presented with? All right. And finally, just the last verse that I wanted to bring out is 2 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse 11. It says, and I'm going to read this in the NLT. And Salakia, this is mid-sentence, but this is the way I wanted to present this and bring this out. It says, "So that Satan will not outsmart us, for we are familiar with his evil schemes." And that's what's happened in the past, because our people being so forgiving and not knowing that the so-called white man is the devil. He is wicked. His devices he's been able to use, and he's been able to get across what it is, a story, a narrative that he wanted to present, and present it that way, because our people tend to have a tendency to just see that face, that so-called white face, and just believe everything that comes out of him, because they see him as a figure of authority. And while he might be in a position of authority, that doesn't take away his wickedness, because he is just that, just wicked. All right. He's a deceiver. All right. That's what he does. That's the playbook he's been using. But the men of Great Millstone, through the truth and the knowledge, the wisdom of Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai, have been able to expose this man, and his time is up, and he's being exposed. All right. And I went a little bit longer than I wanted to go on this, and Salakia for the long video, but I wanted to show you the history and show you how this man is being exposed, and how he's been using the same playbook over and over again, and it's been working for him up until now. He's being exposed now, and his time is very short. So I pray that this has been edifying to the listener. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakah HaKadosh. Shalom.